Welcome back to the Bible Story series. After King Saul died, and following 7 years of civil war, David finally unified the entire nation and became the king of Israel. That year, he was 30 years old. The first major thing David did was to conquer the impregnable fortress of Jerusalem, turning it into the political center, also known as the famous City of David. Next, he did something that revealed his heart. He brought the Ark of the Covenant, the symbol of God's presence, into the city. On that day, David was as happy as a child. He stripped off his royal robes and danced with all his might before the people to celebrate. Although his wife Michal mocked him for losing his dignity, David didn't care. He said, "I will celebrate before the Lord." At this moment, David was at the peak of his life, loving God, loving people, and leading a strong nation. David lived in a palace of cedar, yet his conscience was uneasy because God's ark still dwelt in a tent. He wanted to build a temple for God. Although God declined his offer, because David was a warrior who had shed too much blood, God was deeply moved. Instead, he gave David an earth-shattering promise, known as the Davidic covenant. God said, "I will establish your house, your offspring shall succeed you as king, and his throne will be established forever." This was not just a promise to the Davidic dynasty, it pointed far into the future to the coming Messiah, Jesus Christ. However, the story takes a sharp turn here. The Bible writes a sentence full of implication. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David remained in Jerusalem. Comfort is often the beginning of corruption. One evening, while walking on the roof of the palace, David saw a beautiful woman bathing. Her name was Bathsheba. Instead of looking away, David indulged his lust. He brought her to the palace and slept with her. Even worse, she became pregnant. To cover up his crime, David actually orchestrated a murder. He sent Bathsheba's husband, the loyal warrior Uriah, to the most dangerous front lines to die. The king, who was once after God's own heart, instantly became an adulterer and a murderer. David thought his plan was flawless, but God saw everything. He sent the prophet Nathan to see David. Nathan told a story. There was a rich man with flocks and herds, and a poor man with only one little ewe lamb that he loved like a daughter. When a traveler came to the rich man refused to take from his own flock, but instead took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for his guest. David was furious upon hearing this. The man who did this deserves to die. At that moment, Nathan pointed his finger at David and spoke the thunderous words, "You are the man." David broke down. Unlike Saul, who refused to admit his wrongs, David immediately wept and repented. "I have sinned against the Lord." Although God forgave his sin of death, the consequences of sin, "The sword shall never depart from your house," were just beginning. God's discipline was severe. The second half of David's life was filled with family tragedy, incest among his children, and brothers killing brothers. The most heartbreaking blow came when his most handsome and beloved son, Absalom, launched a coup to kill his father and seize the throne. The aging David was forced to flee Jerusalem. He covered his head, went barefoot, and wept as he walked up the Mount of Olives, while his own people threw stones and cursed him. At this moment, he was no longer the glorious king, but merely a heartbroken father. This is the cost of sin. Even a king is not exempt. The rebellion was eventually quelled. Absalom was killed by David's commander when his hair got caught in a tree. When the news of victory reached the palace, David did not cheer. Instead, he wept gut-wrenching tears. He stumbled around, crying out, "Oh, my son Absalom! Oh, my son Absalom! If only I had died instead of you!" This was a father's deepest pain and a king's deepest helplessness. 2 Samuel draws to a close amidst these sorrowful cries. David's life held immense glory and deep failure. But what made him great was not perfection, but his ability to hold tightly to God, even in his brokenness. David's story tells us, human weakness is real, and the consequences of sin are terrible. But God's grace is also real. David wrote countless psalms of repentance, which have become a comfort to all wounded souls in generations to come.
Thank you for watching. May you have peace and joy.